Whether it's in season or off season, college football talk is best when it's with the voice of college football and also with Steve Deace, of course, Michigan podcast, joining us to talk the game we all love. Steve, what's going on today?
Just counting down the days, brother. We are, 80 some odd days till the season begins. I think we're almost under 50 days until Big Ten Media Days. So before you know it, it'll be here yet again.
And I see that you're repping Chad Henne and his remarkable career with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, we can go with that if you want. We'll go with that if you want to save yourself some emails. We'll go with that.
No. You know I don't shy away. I'm not as out there as you are, but you know I don't shy away from any of that.
Yeah, this is my man,
whatsoever.
Butker, who is man of the year so far in 2024, as far as I'm concerned. So
he absolutely is. It's amazing what he's put out there just in regards to his stance on what is truth and righteousness. And while we're there, Steve, if you don't mind, so Steve delivers it every day when we talk about truth and righteousness and what is most important in our lives and what we should be fighting for in our fine society. And this was in particular very poignant. So this is a clip from yesterday's show. So this is the Tuesday's show, and I put the timestamps up on the repost that I sent out there. So around the 1 hour, 8-minute mark in the 119, not that you don't want to watch the entire show, folks, but if you're only going to watch a few minutes, watch it 108 and 119. It may change your life. So please do that. Give yourself 1 minute to think about some things that are slightly more important. All right, on to the college football, Stephen. You do something on a yearly basis that I do as well, and that's rank and rate the coaches. Now, you are more systematic about it. For as much as I believe I'm systematic in my approach, I certainly take all the metrics and all the variables in play, but I don't have a system. You do, so let's look at your coaches' rankings, and then we will compare them to mine. And so here we go with Steve's coaches ratings for 2024. And lo and behold, Kirby Smart is number one, Dabo at number two, Brian Kelly, LSU. A lot of people would have some pushback there. Kyle Whittingham and Chris Kleiman round out the top five. So explain the system before we dive into the particular specifics this year.
Sure. If you could leave that up there so I can remember my own abbreviations, I would appreciate it. But what I like to come up with as much objective metric as much of an objective metric as I can. Try to remove as many of my emotions and biases out of it as I can. It's impossible. I'm human, so I can't zero that. There's only been one person ever who was totally objective. We hung him on a tree. All right. So, I try to remove as much of my subjectivity as possible. So, when getting ready to start my annual season preview, which I've been doing since I was in the 10th grade, and my preview has always been a projection of what I think the season will be. I've got two things that I look at before I get into actually doing rankings, but I want to kind of have an understanding of the environment. And so I want to look at what teams have in returning, what their potential could be before we start looking at individual units and schedules. And I used to do this with my team total talent ratings, which have had a tremendous amount of success and are why I've just been crushing it with season win totals on my Patreon the last few years. But I've got too many jobs now, Mark. When there's 1,500 guys in the transfer portal every day, I can't keep track of that. I just can't. I don't have time. If it was my full-time job, I would. I don't. So this year I'm actually using SP Plus as a substitute. When Bill Connolly over at ESPN, he rates returning production, but he's added now the transfer portal and recruiting rankings into his projections. They weren't there in past years, which is why I started the team total talent ratings to kind of fill that void. He's now implementing them, and I took a look at him pretty closely here this past week and found that a lot of what he had, knowing the way that my talent ratings were typically trending, is pretty close. There's a few outliers, but overall pretty close. And so the other thing I do is coaching, because that's a big part of our sport. And so how I rate these is, you'll see there are 5 columns there. The first column is on a scale of 1 to 10. Each coach is rated just on their Power 5 head coaching resume, 1 to 10. So you'll see that. Then you'll see 1 to 5, their non-power 5 coaching resume. So, or head coaching resume. So were they a group of 5 coach? Were they an NFL coach? Were they an NFL assistant? Were they a college assistant? All right. And then we have the current team trajectory is the third column. So over the next 4 years, so one recruiting cycle of a player, what's on a scale of 1 to 10, which way is that coach trending? I think it's that way we have both the contemporary listing and then a historical one balancing each other out. And then there's a big game bonus of 1 to 5. Is this a coach known for winning big games or not? Because some coaches just have a unique knack. I think of Lloyd, when we had Lloyd Carr as our coach, we would have almost a mind-numbing loss every year, but he had like an incredible record against top 10 teams, right? So I think we should account for that somehow. And then the column that I know you hate the most, and that is there's a Hall of Fame bonus that I have at the end, which means if this coach was done right now and never coached another game, would they have a Hall of Fame resume? And that is from up to 3 bonus points. And the reason why that is in there is because I need differentiators. A lot of these coaches are kind of lumped together, right? And so who's got a track record of success when you look at a situation, for example, Urban Meyer and Nick Saban are not underdogs very often, or were not underdogs very often, but their records as underdogs was pretty formidable. So I wanted to kind of factor that in as well. And so there's a possibility, I think there, what is it, of 10, 15, 25. I think it's a possibility of 33 points, or 31, I think is the total number you could get. And so those are this year's numbers. If we have a tie, the first tiebreaker is your current coaching trajectory over the next 4 years. That's the first tiebreaker. All right, because that means that I wanted that to be the first tiebreaker. So again, it captured the momentum level that you have right now. And then if it's still tied after that, then I just make the subjective decision after that.
Okay, to me, Kirby Smart is the best coach in college football for probably all the same reasons that you would cite. Dabo Swinney, it could be argued, is still the best coach in college football. It could be argued that he has the best resume of winning as a college football coach, certainly in a concentrated period of time over 10 seasons. Where I have some issues, we're not even going to get into that Hall of Fame column because I hate that list. I have so little respect for what the Hall of Fame is telling us. Or so you are making a projection on whether they would be in the Hall of Fame this minute.
This minute, if they never coached again, this minute, yes.
So that's the one very subjective measure there, because you're not basing that on anything.
Because you have to do things to qualify. You need a minimum 600 winning percentage or for 10 years as a head coach, for example. So there are some bare metrics you have to accomplish. Yeah.
Okay, so if Ryan Day wins 30% of his games for the next 3 seasons, he's going to reach Hall of Fame standards.
Yeah, those are the standards. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, let's get back to the first column, because I cannot believe that you, and again, you're going to have to explain the objectivity versus the subjectivity, that Kyle Whittingham and James Franklin have either equal or better resumes than Ryan Day. And I'm sure half the chat's going crazy thinking I'm just picking on Ryan Day and I'm going to trumpet for the Ohio State coach. But that just seems the most egregious right out of the gate.
Well, I am no fan of James Franklin. First of all, I mean, as a Michigan fan, well, actually, I'm a big fan because we have profited mightily off of his questionable game day decisions over the years. Okay. But brother, I got to tell you, this list this year is pretty thin gruel. Okay. If James Franklin's the 8th best coach in college football, actually 7th, it just goes to show you the level of brain trust that's been lost in this sport over the last year, especially.
Yes.
So I think that's more a reflection of the overall state of the profession. And for Whittingham and Franklin, they've just been head coaches longer. I mean, Ryan Day has been a Power 5 head coach 2019, 20, 21, 22, 5 years. I mean, Whittingham's been a head coach much longer than that. Franklin's been at Penn State 9 years himself. So that's all. That's a reflection of.
So you're putting a high value on length of tenure versus quality.
in general, I put a high value over sustained level of success, and I view that as quality. But again,
Are
if you
you
want
taking?
to, are we really arguing number 5 and number 4 to that extent? If it means that much to you, I'll
Well,
just switch it
yeah,
now, Mark.
we shouldn't, but we got Chris Klein in there. So you're taking his FCS
Yes,
success into huge.
yes.
Okay,
And now he's a
obviously.
10-year head coach. He would absolutely be a Hall of Fame head coach day one. Absolutely. No doubt. You're talking about a guy that won multiple FCS national championships and won a power conference championship, and he's only been a power head coach a handful of years. Unquestionably, he'd be in the Hall of Fame if he never coached again.
So it also appears to me, Steve, as though these resumes are taken into context because Matt Campbell's resume is nowhere close to Ryan Day's,
Correct.
for example.
Yeah, but that's also why Ryan Day. Well, here's another question to ask yourself: how many of the other coaches on this list, if they coached at Ohio State, would have a similar record? And I think
Sure.
the answer is most of them.
Yeah, I have no issue with that. I'm just clarifying.
Yeah.
Now
But
we're
then
looking
if
at
you
your.
Matt Campbell's too high and James Franklin's too high, go to this. See, here's the thing: go to the second sheet.
Okay, before
Yeah.
we do that,
My point is the ranks, the list of quality coaches grows thin, Aragorn. That's my point.
Oh, absolutely.
The
I am
ranks
right
have
there
been,
with you.
we have lost a lot of quality coaching in the last couple of years in this sport.
So here's my list. And forget all the gibberish because that's basically notes for me to cut a video. Kirby 1, Dabo 2. I'm right in line with you. I've got Kalen DeBoer at 3, which is called into question. I know that the resume is short, but I'm emphasizing quality, which is obviously their FCS to Washington, Fresno State for a year and a half, and then all the way into Alabama now. Brian Kelly at 4, Kyle Whittingham at 5, Ryan Day at 6, right there with you. So we are pretty much in step through the top 6. I am making it more of a recency. You're trending on the resume. I'm making it more of a recency rating. Like I am rating these coaches right this second.
Yeah, see, I'm trying to balance it out. We're in a wide variance sport, a very wide variance sport. And that's why I favor long, consistent success. Because we're in a sport where the players change out, and now every 4 years, and now they're changing out between the NFL draft and the portal and NIL and everything. We got guys transferring to schools, getting bags, transferring back to the school after they got the bag. I mean, it's a higher variance sport right now than it's ever been. And so as a handicapper, I'm going to put as much emphasis on what I know, what has been proven to me more than ever before. I'm going to project way less than I ever did before. I'm gonna until proven wrong. And this year may do it. It's a whole new paradigm. It's virtually a new sport this year. So we may have to reevaluate. Just like we all had to reevaluate, Mark. You know, we used to go through the magazines and count returning starters, right? We don't do that anymore, right? Okay. Because of sub packages and everything else, you know. And so just like the returning starters metric doesn't mean anything anymore, we may find that your approach is the right one. I don't know that it's not. But for me, given the amount of uncertainty we have and how much of a wide variance sport this was already outside of a handful of programs, I'm going to go with as much certainty as absolutely possible until proven otherwise.
And so this also calls into question the purpose of what you're doing versus what I'm doing. You're looking for a betting prediction angle.
Correct.
I'm not. I'm just basically flat out saying if we were sitting here in 2010 and ranking Joe Paterno and Bobby Bowden, I'd be ranking them as like the 35th, 40th best coaches in the country because right then and there they had lost their fastball.
Yeah, fair.
And that's what I would be doing. That's why if you see in the parentheses, Steve Sarkisian went from 44 to 8. I'm not trying to overvalue one particular season. Otherwise, hey, if we were just going to rank coaches based on last season, I would rank David Braun to be the best coach in college football at Northwestern. I think he did the best job last year. But of course, I'm not going to go to that extreme.
I've ever seen, so I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
So let's flip back to your after we hit 12. There we go. After Matt Campbell at 12, there we've got Sark at 13, Kirk Ferentz, Mac Brown, all with 17 points. how much have you seen a coach rise or fall generally in this? Like, how much does one big season, and obviously it has more of an impact on a shorter coaching tenure, but like Dave Clawson had a bad football team last year. They went 4-8.
Yeah.
He's a really good football coach that
Yeah.
works with not many resources. Mario Cristobal, boy, you can call into question what he's doing in Miami through 2 seasons. PJ Fleck. Now there's a guy 11-2, 9-4, 9-4 the last 3 full seasons, and then he took a downer at 5-7 before a bowl win.
Right.
So he is at 30.
So to me, this is again where track record matters. Steve Sarkisian's been a head football coach at 3 major programs that all have varying degrees of high tradition. He's had one truly great season as a head coach. One. That was last year. So is that an outlier? Because now they're moving to the mighty SEC. Or was that a forerunner? I don't know. And so my system hedges. If I were just looking at recency like you, he'd be higher. But considering his track record, and they also had the second most players drafted in the NFL at the exact same time, I'm a little hesitant. And so this year they're playing the defending national champions, the preseason #1 team, and the best program of the century so far. And I think 2 of them are on the road. So they're playing Alabama, Georgia, and Michigan. So we'll get a better picture this year. All right. Texas A&M's back on the schedule. They play Oklahoma again. We'll get a better idea this year. And so my ranking there is more of an acknowledgement that the season this guy had is actually not what he's normally been able to do. And we're not talking at podunk schools. We're talking schools that have won national championships in the last, 30 plus years of college football, Washington and USC.
Sonny Dykes, to a certain extent, one big year at the Power 5 level. Now he did it well, of course, at SMU.
Yeah, that's the one. You always go through your rankings and you're like, okay, what doesn't make any sense? Yeah, I know what the numbers say, but I remember when Phil Steele used to do his old podcast, he used to always talk about, well, my computer says this, but I'm just looking at it humanly. I'm going to overrule and go with this prediction, right? And so you're like, what is it? Okay, yeah, I know there are numbers, but these are human beings, not algorithms. So what doesn't make sense? And that's the name I kept coming back to the whole time. And then I realized that the reason why he still remained fairly high up there, despite last year's implosion, is I think one of the programs that's going to benefit the most from the conference shuffle is TCU. I mean, if you look at revenue and recruiting base, I mean, they could become a perennial top 2 or 3 program in the newly formulated Big 12. And so that I decided to go ahead and not tinker with it and just let the numbers speak for themselves, because that was the reason that he still stayed pretty steady there, is because I think that's a reasonable assumption. If you're talking about big jumpers every year and you go to the bottom of my list, it'll put them there. The 5 biggest fallers and the 5 biggest risers from the previous year are always there at the bottom of my list. And then when you see a name in bold, it's that guy's first year at a new school. Or I'm sorry, in italics, it's that guy's first year at a new school.
So what I do with the new guys is I don't put them at the back of the line. They're generally at the back of the line, but I put them ahead of anybody who I believe is not getting the job done, is not meeting expectations at that school, because of course the new guy is a neutral grade at this point. I want to point out a few guys. And I got to tell you, Steve,
I just rank them. They get an automatic. Well, with Sharon Moore, I had an option. Okay, in the last 3 years, the guy has produced the only 2-time Joe Moore award winner at offensive line, and just offensive coordinated the national champion. All right, so when I could have, so he won the most important regular season games Michigan had last year as its head coach. So I had a choice. I could have given him the full 5 points for a non-Power 5 coaching resume, and a 0 for Power 5 coaching resume, or I can give him a bonus point for a Power 5 coaching resume for coaching those games, and 4 points for the non-Power 5 coaching resume. I decided to do the latter. It's 6 points. It's 6 and 1, half dozen of the other. Typically, the year that Ryan Day coached for Urban Meyer for 3 games, he also got a point for the games that he coached, because one of them was a really tough game against TCU in the non-conference, as I recall. All right. But those situations are outliers. Almost always a rookie coach that's never been a Power 5 head coach gets an automatic 0. And then I rate them on the other categories. And then that's usually why those coaches tend to be, down towards the bottom half of the list. But they can rise pretty quickly too.
Steve, outside of a few outliers, you doing this with metrics, me doing it just observation and putting things together and trying to weigh in context and considering resources and all those things, they're incredibly close. Incredibly close. Now, two guys that are in the 30s here intrigue me. So Brett Bielema, to me, is the highest ranked coach who's at a program where he may have zero chance of doing anything substantial.
I mean, he might be fired at the end of the year. Right. Yes. Yeah.
PJ Fleck. Now, what is your take on PJ? Because he's got his detractors, and I love the guy. I love the guy. I got to say it.
I think PJ Fleck is what would happen if a Pentecostal youth minister became a college football coach. That's what I think. All right. And so if that you like the cut of that jib, he's your thing. If not, he is not your thing. Okay. So that's why opinions, even though he's a pretty nice guy, that's why opinions tend to be pretty polarizing, because the persona is the kind of thing that you either adore or you do not. But his players do play hard for him. They play a tough physical brand of football. He has rebuilt the program after, they had the whole scandal with the rape allegations and everything else under Tracy Claeys that threatened to ruin that program. So, but last year they were just physically overmatched at times.
Yeah.
And now the league is tougher. I think what'll be fascinating to see is what happens really to all these old Big Ten West programs now, with no divisions, and 8-4 seasons could maybe 9-3 seasons could land you in Indy and get you a trophy. And now, see you at the, whatever bowl, it'll be interesting. My theory is there'll be one more round of expansion for the next TV contract. And I think you'll see the Big Ten go back to divisions, actually. I think you'll have a 20-team league. You'll have 2 10-team divisions. That's what I think will happen.
Northwestern and Minnesota, probably Illinois right there, have the lowest win totals in Vegas right now. Minnesota's been winning under PJ Fleck. I was going to note his bowl record, as you well know, is 6-0.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to necessarily say that he's been playing in, BCS level games. He's been, winning the games against the likes of Syracuse and Georgia Tech in the postseason, but still undefeated postseason record. Northwestern, correct me if I'm wrong, has one of the highest returning production rates in the country.
Yeah, especially on defense. Yes. Yeah.
And no one's giving them any credit for coming back and trying to repeat a similar season to what they did last year.
It's a very interesting situation with them. Who knows what kind of home field advantage they will have. They're playing at this makeshift stadium and then Wrigley Field. They lost their starting quarterback to the portal. A lot of things went right for them, but not like they won a whole bunch of lucky games kind of way. I mean, went right for them from an intangibles leadership standpoint. What David Braun and those seniors did to keep that team together, like I said earlier, it might be the best Big Ten single season coaching job I have ever seen. Okay. I mean, we're talking about a team that had a win total of 3.5 when the season kicked off. But now there's film on you, and now expectations are higher. And back to PJ Fleck, I think expectations are going to be the key for him in that administration moving forward. If he's got a Kentucky-like administration where they understand who they are, they're self-aware, okay, and they're fine with Mark Stoops being 7-5, 8-4 every year because they get where they are, and they're not going to try to go for the brass ring and then maybe make a wrong hire and go back to being 3-9. I mean, he could go 7-5 and 8-4 there, for the next 20 years if he wants to. But that's a question for the fan base and the administration. It's an easier call at Kentucky because, they've usually got a top 10 or at least a perceived top 10 basketball program to look forward to in the winter. And so football is kind of considered to be the warm-up act, if you will. But, they don't have that at Minnesota either, And so I just think all of them, Wisconsin, Iowa, that have been the two biggest, behemoths in the West Division over the last 20 years. I think every West program is is due for very soon here, kind of a checkup on, do you understand the situation that you are now in here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And let's stay right there. Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. I'm a bit perplexed by this number. The win total out of Vegas is 7. It was 7 last year.
Well, now I've not done my win totals yet because I'm not finished with my power rating, so I've not even looked at many win totals. Okay, so I'm hearing some of these for the first time on purpose. I've avoided them because I don't want it to influence my power ratings at all.
Okay.
I want the power ratings to influence my thought on the win totals, not the win totals to influence my power ratings.
Okay, I'm not going to nail you down to a record, but just talking about the his program and what they've got.
What you're telling me is, like, for the 4th year in a row, Iowa over the win total is going to be one of my win total best bets. That's what you're telling me.
It's basically, yeah. If you look at the,
but Mark, they're 7, 7.5, 8 every single year. Doesn't matter what they bring back. That's their win total every year.
They are an outlier in the Big Ten when it comes to this. As soon as those schedules were released, I did the addition and subtraction of saying, basically, this is what you're looking at, Illinois. This is your previous schedule. This is what it now means to lose Purdue and Northwestern, or, well, of course, not Northwestern, Purdue and Nebraska off your schedule and gain Oregon and USC or whatever. We did the difference in what this is going to mean for these teams. Iowa doesn't have to face that, though, this year. They've got Washington and they've got UCLA. And they play Iowa State at home. Their Big Ten East, what was the old Big Ten East, is only Ohio State and 2 should-be wins. So they don't have a typically tougher Big Ten schedule, and they're sitting on the 7 number, according to Vegas.
Yeah, all you just told me is there'll be another one of my, for the 4th year in a row, Iowa over the win total will be one of my win total best bets. That's all you told me. Yep.
Steve Deace, Michigan Podcast. Of course, get on over there. Check out Michigan Podcast and the Bigger 10 Podcast, which will rev up here, I'm sure. Well, I'll ask the man himself. What are the plans for both the Michigan Podcast and Bigger 10?
So we haven't announced it yet, but the next season of Michigan Podcast will actually debut next Tuesday. Bigger 10 will debut the following Wednesday. They will stagger back and forth, and they'll begin being weekly with Big Ten football media days.
Awesome. All right, back to Sharon Moore. He hasn't gotten punched in the mouth. We haven't seen them play a game under his leadership, albeit, of course, Jim Harbaugh leading the team as the head coach. Are you getting positive inclinations, vibes about the way he's leading this program? And again, the rubber hasn't met the road yet, but Sharon Moore as a long-term success at Michigan?
The long-term, I'm not sure of, because it's in the short term, I think he'll do fine. He's essentially been Jim Harbaugh's Padawan. He has coached every conceivable aspect of this program, just about, in terms of his path to the head coaching position. I mean, he started as a tight ends coach, and that's the Little League right field of full-time coaching jobs. That's where you put the guy that you're not sure if he's any good or not. Okay, and you're going to make that guy, do the most, be on the road the most recruiting. All right, that's the dirt road. Okay, and he started there. He took over as I'd never been an offensive line coach before, Mark, and won the next 2 Joe Moore Awards back to back. Then he takes over as the offensive coordinator, wins the national championship. I think it's almost tougher, frankly, to have another guy prepare your team all week long and then have you go out there and lead that exact team on game day and make those decisions, because you're asking yourself, are these my decisions? Am I impersonating him? Am I my own man? Whom should I listen to? And the way he navigated all of those situations was superb. I mean, against Ohio State, look at what Urban Meyer said in the Big Ten Network. He's never heard of a guy being the offensive line coach, the offensive coordinator, and the head coach of the team on the same day. And that is exactly what Sharon Moore did against Ohio State last year. And the results speak for themselves. So I'm not concerned about the short term. They did a great job using NIL for roster retention. We had a team coming back that has as many as 4 first-team All-Americans on it. So the structure is there. I told you after the spring, the depth is better than I had hoped. That I think that the 20 and 21 kids now, or the 22 and 23 kids are ready to be that next layer of depth when most of them haven't played much yet. He doesn't have a JJ McCarthy. So I think that's an issue. Does he even have a quarterback is an issue, but we're still going to be among the top 2 or 3 best programs in the country along the line of scrimmage. Again, if you combine both sides, I don't know that the schedule's not tougher. It's different. I mean, if we had played Penn State in September, no one would have said what a cushy schedule Michigan had. It's just that all those games were all backloaded. Okay. And so, you're playing Penn State on the road. You have a sandwich game with a perennial bowl team. You're then playing Ohio State. You're then playing a Big Ten championship game. That's a little bit like if you're playing Ohio State, Oregon. Well, actually, Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas is tougher because they're both top 4 this year. But those games are now more spread out. There's actually kind of a rhythm to Michigan's schedule. Fresno State, then Texas. Arkansas State, then USC. You see what I'm saying? So you're not facing the kind of gauntlet down the stretch that last year's team did. So here's the biggest advantage Sharon Moore has: the expanded playoff. If they go 9-3 with this schedule, they're making the playoff. Okay, 9-3. We went 9-3 under Jim Harbaugh a ton, and it seemed like the sky was falling. That's the whole complexion of this is now different, if you know what I'm saying. And so that's, I think, the biggest advantage that he has. We could have the kind of loss that Alabama had last year when it also didn't know yet who its quarterback was, and if Jalen Milroe was going to be that guy, and lost at home to Texas early on and then rebounded the rest of the year. Very conceivable that I could see that happening at Michigan as well. But we're still strong where we want to play the most. That's the key. The kind of style we want to play, that's where we're actually the strongest. But we're playing more teams this year where now Texas lost basically its entire defensive line. Okay. So let me tell you, I don't know who the quarterback's going to be against Texas. Let me tell you what the game plan is going to be. Unless we're like -3 in turnovers and down 21-0, Mark, we're running the ball 52 damn times. That's what's going to happen. Okay. And we're going to make Texas stand there in 95-degree heat and show they can stand up at the line of scrimmage for 70 snaps. We got the players to do that. It may not work. We'll see. I'd be more concerned if we were strong in air. Like at Michigan, everybody, well, who are your wide receivers? It's Michigan. Who the hell cares? All right. No, we barely throw to those guys. Okay. That doesn't matter. Okay. Frankly, we're more concerned about the wide receiver blocking, frankly. Okay. And that's not even a joke. It's true. Okay. So, but when you are playing those kinds of games, who's the guy that can make 3rd and 8 consistently a conversion? JJ McCarthy could do that. And I don't know that we have that guy right now.
Well, I believe
that's really the difference probably between going 11-1 and 9-3, 8-4 is that right there.
And I believe I made this statement on your show that if the spring game was any indication to what these quarterbacks are on a regular basis, then it's more about selecting what kind of offense you want to run and who you want to be than it is the caliber of play or the ultimate production. It's just going to come more on the ground, of course, with Orji. On the other hand,
if you put a gun to my head, I think you're looking at some form of a Jack Tuttle, Alex Orji tandem, at least early on.
And speaking of the schedule, the 9-3, I generally agree with, gets Michigan a playoff berth unless it looks a certain way. Meaning, if they get tagged with the 3 assumed losses, and there's nobody to step up like a USC to look like a good win, that could be an issue. Or if they get blown out somewhere, which they shouldn't. I don't think they're built that way. I don't think they will get blown out by anyone. That could be an issue in trying to squeeze into the playoffs.
Yeah, it could be. But we could also say that about 10 other teams. So
absolutely.
And that's where it gets into kind of subjectives. You're right at that point.
And we reviewed about 10 other teams that are at the mid to lower tiers of the Big Ten. And all this media money is going to be coming in. Now, the Big Ten has been right there with the SEC in regards to a media contract, even before the new one kicks in. Do you expect in any way that a Indiana, Rutgers, Minnesota, we know the schools in question are ever going to get serious about football and take the money that they're making more than Clemson or Florida State or some perennial football powers and put that to good use.
So Indiana, I would argue, kind of has. I mean, the buyout they gave Tom Allen, man, is legit. I mean, that's a double-figure, multi-million-dollar buyout. Kurt Signetti, I think, was a very good hire. The problem is, this is a zero-sum game. All right, there are only so many good players, and so things that you could have done in the past, like Indiana wanted to decides we're just going to go full bag, man, and we'll just see if the NCAA busts us in 5 years. Okay, like Mike White did that at Illinois in the '80s. That's what happened, and Bo Schembechler's who turned him into the NCAA. Okay, but that's what Mike White did at Illinois in the '80s. He went full bag, man, and and here's a tidbit. Name the last Big Ten champion to win the Big Ten by beating all the other Big Ten teams. It was Illinois in 1983. The Big Ten was playing a true round robin, only had only had 9 conference games. Okay, for 2 years. They tried this in the 80s. They got rid of it. And Illinois went 9-0 one year.
Now, if you would have given me 30 seconds, Steve, I might have come up with that.
You might have, yeah. But
8-1, they lost to Missouri that year. They were, I believe, 10-1 before they went off to the Rose Bowl.
But that strategy won't work anymore, because this is the last year we're not going to have some form of revenue sharing going directly to the players in the millions. So there's no bags. My point is, what is the outlier that even if they invest, what is the outlier that a Rutgers or Indiana has that would cause a critical mass of players to go there as opposed to Michigan, Ohio State, USC? See what I'm saying? Okay, Penn State. There isn't one. I don't know what they could possibly create. And, I think we had these conversations last year when Oregon and Washington were brought in. Just to get to the Big Ten championship game, you need Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Nebraska. Now, these are 4 of the 8 winningest programs, in USC. So 5 of the 8 winningest programs of all time. Okay, you need those 5. UCLA, all right, which is a top 20 winningest program of all time, or Washington and Oregon, which have played 4 and won national championships. All right, so you need those. What is that? 9 schools or 8 or 9? Yep. You need 7 of those 8. You need to be better than 7 of those 8 schools in any given year. To win the Big Ten, you probably need to be better than you need to be better than all 8 of those schools in any given year. How many times in the entire history of Wisconsin football, and I'll start with them, because they've been maybe beyond, after Michigan and Ohio State, and in some years they've been above Michigan in that group, the best program in this league for the last 30 years. How many of those years peak Wisconsin would be better than all 8 of the programs I just mentioned, Mark?
It would be difficult to judge, because even when their record showed that they might
they didn't
have the schedule.
Correct.
Yeah,
they were playing Purdue and Illinois. Correct. Right. So maybe once. How many times has Iowa been better than all 8 of those teams at the same time? Same thing, playing the easier schedule. This is what you're looking at to win these kinds of leagues now. And so I don't even know that it matters if they invest. I don't. If anything, I think there might be more incentive to go full pre-Joe Burrow Cincinnati Bengal and just be like the ownership that just pockets the money and just goes cheap on the franchise. Just enjoy the money and take your L, because I don't believe I will see I'm 50 now. I don't believe I'll see a traditional Big Ten West team win a Big Ten championship in my life, the rest of my lifetime. I don't. Wisconsin included.
I would tend to agree. And I think that we've got half of the Power 5 that plays like that anyway. They don't want to be embarrassed. They want to get to a bowl game because it looks good and because they can make a little bit more money and just collect their media check and be good to go. But those days might be over.
There is way more talent. What's happened with the camps and everything else, the talent is way more spread out, way more democratized. You also only need a few difference makers, frankly. You're only playing 5 guys at a time. In this sport, you're playing 22 guys at a time. You need more than a few difference makers. So I just don't know what their path moving forward is. I don't. And as long if the networks are like, and ultimately, I think what'll keep these leagues together or not is if the networks say we're not paying for Michigan and Indiana anymore. We're not paying for Ohio State to play Northwestern or Wrigley Field anymore. You want to put those games on, fine, but we'll put them on for you, but we don't have a rights fee for that. We just want to play the big games, because then you're going to get into, well, if now the best teams in the leagues are playing the toughest schedules because those are the games the networks want, then we want even more of the revenue then, because we're accruing more of the risk. You see what I'm saying? Our players are getting injured more. We're accruing more of the risk. Michigan going 8-4 with this schedule ain't the same as, what you mentioned with Iowa going 10-2 with that schedule. Okay. You see what I'm saying? So those are all things that'll be figured out down the line. But I don't know what the path forward is to winning a Big Ten championship for a traditional Big Ten West team ever again. I really don't. And frankly, the Big Ten West never won the Big Ten championship game anyway. So I don't know what the path forward going for them. I didn't even include programs like Michigan State that have shown they can be great at given times. I didn't even throw them into the mix. That would kind of be your 9th team. I guess you could say that's the 9th one. All right. So if you Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, all those teams, you'd have to be just to get to Indy. You'd have to be better than 8 of those 9 teams. And then to win it, you got to be better than all 9 of those teams in any given year. There's no way all 9 of those teams are down in the same year. There's no way 8 of them are down in the same year.
Well, back to your point about revenue distribution, I've been saying this for months. What I believe we'll finally get to is some type of revenue split where each league, and we'll just take the Big Ten, is honoring the membership equally for maybe, let's say, 50% of the revenue, but the other 50%, if Ohio State or Michigan has to pay a roster $22 million, the same as Indiana, right, and they're fighting over the same players, they say, hey, we're making the money.
Yep. I mean, that's just capitalism. That's exactly right. That you just described a meritocracy at that point. Yep. That's a good point.
Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina. Well, Clemson and Florida State, the ACC is fighting a 2-front war on 4 fronts, actually, in 2 different states. What do you see in regards to, we'll start with the Big Ten, some type of pecking order, pros and cons for those universities and football programs coming into the Big Ten? The thing to remember about the Big Ten, and I'd have to look if Washington is included. But if Washington, the Big Ten has never expanded to a school that was not in the AAU. True. Although Nebraska is not currently
now, but was when they were admitted.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes. So Miami is in the AAU. Florida State is close to gaining admission in the AAU. All right. So North Carolina is, a Michigan level of public university. So they're a benchmark in the AAU. I would look at those schools to see where the Big Ten is the most likely to go. Is AAU membership combined with branding?
Yeah, I don't see Clemson going to the Big Ten.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't see that being a fit. I could see Florida State for sure going to the Big Ten. I could see Miami for sure going to the Big Ten. And I could see North Carolina for sure going to the Big Ten. Now, I don't think all 3 of them would go unless Notre Dame goes 2 as a 4th. I think you're looking at 2 more teams to get to 20 is what I think.
Or is there an attractive running mate for North Carolina in Duke?
If you're the Big Ten and you can't get North Carolina and Miami, but you can get Miami, would you rather have Miami and Florida State or North Carolina and Duke? Say if North Carolina, if the state government North Carolina says North Carolina and Duke are a package deal, like with the state government in Virginia, that's why we're not talking about them. The state government in Virginia has made it very clear Virginia and Virginia Tech are a package deal. I don't think the Big Ten has any interest in Virginia Tech at all. No. I think they'd have interest in Virginia. Yeah, but not in Virginia Tech. So then the question is, would you rather have North Carolina and Duke or Miami and Florida State? I'd rather have Miami and Florida State.
Sure.
We don't know that Duke basketball is a brand. We know Mike Krzyzewski's a brand, or he was. We know that.
I was clamoring for Miami, Florida State like 5 years ago because I thought that the Big Ten could plant the recruiting flag there.
I agree.
And that's the only thing that this league doesn't have or did not have before the expansion was enough volume of players in the footprint.
I think what ends up happening is it ends at 20. The Big Ten goes to 2 10-team divisions. Like, the Big Ten. That's what I think will happen. And the divisions will be north-south geographic.
Matthew Miller, thank you so much for the contribution. As a Texas fan, everyone keeps talking Texas offensive line versus Michigan D-line, but I feel like the bigger mismatch for Michigan is the Michigan O-line versus the Texas defensive front.
I agree. I agree with that. That's why I said that the game plan against Texas is going to be, unless we have 3 turnovers early and it's 21-0, it's going to look like Penn State in the second half. And we're going to want to put that game into a mosh pit, do the boa constructor thing. And, I mean, Michigan's goal against Texas is to come out of that game with you not knowing whether Alex Orji can throw or not. Because you never had to find out.
My concern for Ohio State is that Will Howard is just an above average quarterback. And outside of intangibles aside, that they could white knuckle the season and feel too much pressure and all that, I'm talking about tangibles on the field, would be Will Howard is a good quarterback, really good for Kansas State. Shoot, I applauded and thought, hey, he's really good for Kansas State. But once he became a guy that wore scarlet and gray, I thought, he doesn't meet the standard. And that the offensive line is only okay. They only replaced one offensive lineman. They did not go to the portal to do the things that I thought that they needed to do on the offensive front.
Yeah, I agree. I before I even have my numbers, I will rank Georgia number 1 because even though I will have Ohio State better than them at numerous positions, but I'm going to have Georgia with the better coach, the better quarterback, and the better offensive line. And those are basically the 3 most important things in college football, with the defensive line somewhere in there or very close behind. But here's where Will Howard might be the biggest benefit to Ohio State. That he would have been the perfect quarterback transfer for Michigan. At Ohio State, his skill set is he maybe doesn't match what Ohio State really wants to do, which is, exploit defenses with those receivers 35, 40 times. That's not really his game. But in terms of we have a Kansas State program just with much better players. The kind of quarterback he is, game manager plus, the guy who can make enough throws on 3rd and 8 to matter, but he's really a solid leader. He can turn 3rd and 5 into a running down with his feet, so we continue to possess the football. He would have been the perfect bridge quarterback for Michigan. And if he was on our team, I'd be much more optimistic about this season. Maybe I might even pick us to win the Big Ten again. So at Ohio State, he's somewhat miscast, although I think he'll fit better with what Chip Kelly likely wants to do than what Ryan Day traditionally has. But the biggest benefit that I think he has to Ohio State is you don't have to line up against him, in the end of November for your rival, because I mean, he would have answered a lot of the biggest question marks that Michigan has going into the season. And it's not that I think he's a great quarterback. It's not like, well, he's a great quarterback. No, I think he's great because he would have played for Michigan. That's not what I mean. It means that the style that we play and what we're looking for is exactly what he is. Exactly what he is.
Yes,
like Sam Hartman is not a good fit for us. That's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. Will Howard is who we are and who we want to be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're discussing Orji versus either Tuttle or Warren. Right. He's the merge.
The combination of the two.
Yes.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes.
All right, Steve, I believe I know the answer to this, but before we let you go, heading into 2024 here, while the rest of us are sick of what's happened to college football, or most of us are, I got to think with your day job, are you still going to be able to turn off everything else, watch college football and just relax and enjoy and think, hey, this is exactly typical college football. This is what it was for me in 1995.
I don't know the answer to that yet. I will tell you, winning the Natty, we could go 7-5 the next couple of years, and I'm honestly, I don't care. You know, I mean, I hope we win every game, but I'm not. If we,
Sure.
I'm not going to have nearly the level of dejection over losses like I've had in the past over the next couple of years. I just, that just. And what I love about this is how I'm going to open the next season of Michigan Podcast next week. I love the fact that we won it all the last year of college football as we know it. I mean, to me as a fan, that's like a poetic ending. That's like the ending of Hoosiers, and you hear Gene Hackman come on and say, "I love you guys," when they're showing the photo of the team. Okay, that was perfect. The last year of college football as we've known it, we won it all. And I got to see it. I got to experience the Rose Bowl with my son and my wife. And I what's better than that? Nothing. Even doing it again wouldn't match that. Okay. So I don't know what's going to happen. For now, I'm excited about the season, as I always am. I'm going to treat it as the most wonderful time of the year going in. I've got a few days before my son's internship when he'll be out of town. Before he leaves for that, and when the new college football game comes out, him and I will absolutely obscenely binge on that for a couple of days and enjoy it. Okay. But once we get here and the season starts and, guys are holding out now because my NIL check didn't come through. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that yet, So we'll see. Here's what I do know. What I know is one of my great pastimes, and it's trivial and doesn't matter, but short of the things that do matter, a few things in life have given me more joy over the years than college football has. And I got to see my favorite team win it all the last year of the sport as I knew it. And I love that. And if it's like Avengers Endgame, the perfect ending. And then what they do from there kind of sucks because they woke it up, which is what's going on right now. I'll always have the old MCU movies to go back and watch again. You know what I'm saying? You can just watch those again. I don't have to watch the new I don't have to watch the new woke MCU. I don't have to watch that. And given the ratings, I'm not the only one making that decision, So I got my Avengers Endgame. I got the perfect ending. I'm good. It'd be great if we could continue this on, but if we don't, life will go on. We'll see.
Well, within the framework of the way you laid it out, historically, I get it. So I can't completely make this analogous, but in 2015, after winning in 2014, what do you think my attitude was? Win again.
Yeah.
Win this one.
Yeah. Yep. And I'd have that same attitude if Jim was back. It was the same system. You see what I'm saying? But it's not the same system. It's large. It's an entirely different sport on multiple levels. And we're rebooting things with a new head coach. So now I could also argue that if Jim was going to leave, it's the perfect time. It's very clear Jim wanted no part of dropping bags, even legally, for 17-year-old kids. As an NFL guy, he comes from the sport of rookie salary caps and carry my bags. You know what I'm saying? It's very clear that I think Michigan fans think Ward Manuel is the reason that we weren't paying high school recruits with NIL the last couple of years. Nope. I've got my issues with Ward Manuel. Okay. He's gotten more aggressive this year, which is good, but he needs to be a lot more Gene Smith. Okay. And a lot less caretaker, but he's not the reason we've not been paying high school recruits. Jimmy didn't want to do it. Jimmy was like, that's a terrible thing for your locker room and culture, is to have a bunch of guys that haven't done a damn thing on the field, making more money than the guys who have. We're not doing that here. And so the paradigm is shifting and changing. Jim's an old school guy. He won it all. This is probably the perfect time for, if you're going to lose a Hall of Fame coach, for him to go and to bring another generation in. You just hope the next generation guy you hired can do the job. You know what I'm saying? It's like the timing's good to make a move, but what you don't know is if the guy you hired can actually do the gig. Okay. And we're going to find that out in real time.
But unlike Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, and some others, Dabo Sweeney, you got a 3-game audition that
Correct.
looked pretty damn good.
And they weren't just any 3 games for that matter. I mean,
Yep.
They were the biggest road game, the toughest road game all year. The game where he won 1,000 games or 1,000th game, and arguably the biggest Michigan-Ohio State game of all time. It's certainly in the top 5 in terms of what was at stake, the rankings, where both teams were, everything else.
And I think we agree it will never be the same.
No, that's the thing that I can tell you right now will not be the same. Michigan and Ohio State will always be big to us, but Duke and North Carolina, as great as a rivalry as that is in college basketball, no one's season is getting wrecked by losing that game. Unless it's in the Final Four, and they've only met one time in a Final Four. That was Krzyzewski's last game. So the idea now that what you and I grew up with all our lives with the 10-year war and now with the playoff and everything else, where essentially you could feel like you wasted an entire year if you lose that game. Every now and then one of us will be the reason the other team didn't get a playoff bid. Like, we might be like 9-2 going into your game this year, and you might beat us, and that means we're ranked 12th instead of 11th and don't get in. But the annual we can pee in your Cheerios and make you hate life, that's gone. That doesn't exist on a perennial basis anymore, for better or for worse.
I agree. And I tell people, I'm not going to tell them how to feel. If you inherently still feel that much emotion toward that game, absolutely, that's you. But logistically, you cannot argue that it means the same, because it does not. There is not a day that goes by.
That could change, Mark. If we expanded 2 more teams or go to 2 10-team divisions, then we're kind of back to where we were before. And that game is for all the marbles at the end, like Alabama and Auburn used to be as a division rivalry at the end and as well. And we could kind of return to that. But I think it'll take that for that to happen.
But it's still a 12 or 14 team playoff.
Correct. Yeah.
So what I hear every day on this channel from someone is, Ryan Day gets fired if he loses to Michigan. 2 years ago in a 14 playoff, he almost won a national championship after losing to Michigan by 3 scores.
One Marvin Harrison Jr. injury or one missed field goal away from winning the national championship. Correct. Yes.
So he's going to be judged on playoff success.
Yep. Ultimately, I agree.
Yeah.
Now I will tell you, if you lose to us again this year, the amount of heat that will come down will make winning that next playoff game real hard to move on and focus on that. Okay. Sure. But empirically, you are correct. Yes.
Steve Deace, Michigan podcast in the Bigger Ten. It's coming back your way very soon. Steve, it's always a pleasure. Know you got a ton going on. It's always great to have you here to talk college football.
You bet. Always appreciate to get a break from the real world to do this, man. So thanks.
Steve Deace, Michigan podcast. He's the best. Please join him on Michigan podcast and also his day job, where he is talking about real life, real concerns in this country, and doing it as well or better than anyone, standing up for righteousness and the truth. So we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Florida State live at 6 Eastern, Miami live at 7 Eastern. Please join us then on those respective channels. And we'll be back on this main channel for the Big Ten Live Show. That's every Friday at 7 Eastern. So please join us then. You can call me directly, talk college football. Again, the Big Ten Live Show is Friday at 7 Eastern. We'll see you in just about 1 hour. We'll see you over on Florida State Live. See you then. Most of us are on the internet pretty much all the time. It's fun. You get to socialize, you get entertained, and in this day and age, it's pretty much necessary. And even if you're one of those people that's not on the internet all the time, you know what is? Your personal information. And there are people out there trying to hack you all the time. They want your email address, they want your phone number, they want your place of employment, and they want to do bad things with it. There's also fairly legitimate corporations and companies that want your information. They want it for marketing purposes. They're going to buy it. They're going to sell it. They're going to trade it. At the very least, it's annoying to you. It's a nuisance. It's aggravating. Your email gets cluttered up with spam email. You get robocalls all the time. That's at the very least. At the worst, it's a threat to your family, to your friends, to your personal information, to your banking, to your finances, to your security, to your safety, to your identity. It can be pretty serious. This video is sponsored by Aura. I got hacked and it was pretty obvious. This was about 8 or 9 months ago. and there were red flags all over the place. And I didn't exactly know what to do, but I knew I needed to do something quickly. I mean, quickly. I researched 8, 10, or 12 companies immediately. I went all over the place. I asked people. I was online looking for the best company that could serve my needs and secure my information. You know who I found? Aura. And I'm glad I did. It was amazing. I contacted them. They got right back to me immediately. Their customer support is phenomenal. Their customer service is first-rate, friendly. They are detailed. They know what they're doing, and they do it right, and they will protect you. In addition to everything I just mentioned, they've got a password-keeping service. They keep your credit score. They notify you anytime there's a possible data breach. This has happened to me a number of times. I'm getting notifications all the time when there's a possible compromise to my credit score or anything that I don't want. They've got a VPN that will allow you to browse the internet anonymously. It's amazing. And again, customer service support available 24/7. Click the link in the description section below and get 2 free weeks of Aura. Protect your finances, protect your information, protect your privacy, protect your identity. I did, and I'm glad I did. Aura, thank you so much for what you've done for me, and now for my Voice of College Football community.